How does one feel at the time of death?
Based on readings and scriptures, what it says is that the physical pain associated with death is hardly anything. It's like a mosquito bite, a baby, an injection.
What is the soul?
The soul is an aspect of God within us.
God lives inside this body? Can we say that?
Yeah, everything is created by God. So the individual, which is you and I, also has the essence of God within us.
And what is Paramatma?
The closest to God in its sublime essence is what you call the Paramatma.
So, when does the soul enter the body?
It makes its presence felt, or it enters or occupies the body around the 7th month of pregnancy.
What can we do in our lives to ensure a calm and peaceful death? आज हम मिल रहे हैं हरी से. Who is हरी? दिखने में तो बिल्कुल नॉर्मल ह्यूमन बीइंग लगेंगे, शॉर्ट पैंट पहने हुए. IIM Calcutta, Bank of America, JP Morgan, right now an entrepreneur, runs a big tech company. लेकिन इसके पीछे he is one of the biggest spiritual guru that I've ever met. और आज हम बात करने वाले हैं लाइफ, डेथ, सोल, पर्पस ऑफ लाइफ, सोल सर्चिंग एंड मच मोर. इस पॉडकास्ट के बाद आपकी लाइफ डेफिनेटली बदल जाएगी. Stay tuned. Hari, we are so happy and grateful to have you with us today.
Thank you. Equally excited to be here.
Wow. And looking forward to this beautiful conversation. To begin with, please बताइए, what is the soul? And what is our higher soul? And how is our soul connected to the higher soul?
Good. Interesting. Let me take a stab at it. So there is this universe, there is this life that we have all around us. There is a certain intelligence that is governing this life. So for want of a better word, let's call it God. Now, think of this God as an ocean of life. And imagine that there are several bottles or receivers that are dipped in this ocean. So if we have an open bottle, a part of the ocean is also inside the bottle. So if you call that ocean of life God, then the individualized part of the ocean, which is in the bottle, is what you call the soul. So, in other words, the soul is an aspect of God within us. To give another example, let's take the concept of a tree. You have a tree, the tree gives rise to fruits. Inside the fruit, you will find a seed, which is the hologram of the tree itself. So, if you call the tree God, the seed within the fruit is what you call the soul.
Okay. So soul is basically a part of God.
Yes.
Acha. Nice. And what is the higher soul?
So if you look at the ocean and if you look at the water which is in a container, you will find that there is a difference in the quantity. Quality wise, it is essentially the same because it's H2O, both within the ocean as well as in the container. But if you look at the volume of water within the ocean and the volume of water in the container, there is a huge degree of difference. Now, in the using science and electricity, you have the concept of voltage. And you also realize that there is a stepping down of the voltage that you receive from the power station to your house. So what gets generated in the power station is several million volts of electricity. But what comes to the house is, let's say, 220 volts. But there has to be a step down process in between. So if you call the electricity that is generated in the power station God, then there has to be a stepping down effect to the electricity that comes home. So if you call the electricity that comes home as an individual soul or the incarnated soul, the intermediate transformer or the stepping down effect of the voltage is what you call the higher soul. Let's take another practical example to make it easy to understand. You have the entire body. Let's say you wear a shoe. When you wear the shoe, it is only your feet that go inside the shoe. It is your feet that actually experience the shoe. But then you realize the feet is not alone by itself. There is the leg. So if you call the feet, which is inside the shoe, as the incarnated soul, the leg itself is the higher soul. There is a connection between the foot and the leg. Now, once you're inside the shoe, unfortunately, that part of the leg which is inside the shoe loses awareness of the leg which is outside the shoe.
Yes.
So, from that standpoint, the leg outside the shoe is the higher soul, and the foot or the feet which is inside the shoe is what you call the incarnated soul.
Right. And when we say soul, so basically soul is God. So we are God, or God lives inside us. God lives inside this body. Can we say that?
Yeah. So there is, everything is created by God. Everything has the hallmark or the stamp of God. So the individual, which is you and I, also has the essence of God within us. Unfortunately, the essence of God within the person or the individual is not aware of the pervasiveness of God that is surrounding it.
Right.
Like, for example, even now as we speak, there is the presence of God all around us. But unfortunately, we may not be aware of that presence. It is like if the water is in the individual container and it looks at another container, it can see another container. But it is losing sight of the water which is within the container.
Right.
But if you focus on the water which is within the container, you actually see water in that container and you see water all around in the ocean. Then you say, oh, there is actually no difference. It is essentially the same water which is available here, which is available there, which is all pervasive. That is what you call God consciousness. But unfortunately, because we are contained within the bottle or the vessel, it gives rise to what you call separativeness or individual consciousness. And because of this individual consciousness, we tend to live a self-centered life, to an extent a selfish life, and in the process we cause harm to each other. And that is one of the reasons for all the violence that you see around us. But once we realize that there is the aspect of the ocean inside you, and there is a similar aspect of the ocean within another person, and we are actually all swimming in this ocean, and it is a play of the ocean, right, in different vessels, then there comes an awareness that, look, even though individually we might be separate, but collectively we are just that one. And that may bring about a change in attitude that the person has towards life and towards how he or she feels about other people.
I really like the bottle wala example. I can actually visualize me being one of the bottles in the ocean and surrounded by other bottles and the water all around. So, and what is Paramatma?
Yeah, so let's talk from the point of view of the body itself. The body is a vessel or a vehicle, right? You are not the body, you are the I am, or the soul that is occupying the body. It's just like the water occupying the vessel. Now, this water comes from the vast ocean. So this water, which occupies the vessel, is called the Jivatma. Now, where does the Jivatma come from? The Jivatma comes from a source, its own, which is what you call the Atma or the higher soul. And where does the Atma really come from? The Atma comes from the Paramatma. Now, beyond the Paramatma, there is this one universal God, which is what you call Parabrahman in Sanskrit. So God stands for Parabrahman. From God, the closest to God in its sublime essence is what you call the Paramatma. From the Paramatma, there is a step down of the voltage or electricity. It comes down to a lower level. It manifests itself as the Atma or the higher soul. And this Atma or the higher soul further steps itself down as the Jivatma, which is occupying the form of the body itself.
So only Jivatma occupies a body. Rest everything, they don't have bodies.
Yeah, they occupy subtle bodies. So when you talk about bodies, right, there is a body that you can touch, you can feel, you can see. It is made of the four elements. That is what you call the sthul sharir or the physical body. It is the jivatma or the incarnated soul that occupies the physical body. The atma or the higher soul is beyond the physical body itself, but it resides in what you call subtle bodies, in subtle vehicles that are not made of physical substance or matter. And the param atma is actually even beyond that. Now let's take another example. It's easier to correlate
Huh.
with examples. You actually look at a solid block of ice. So when you look at a solid block of ice, you can touch it, you can feel it, right? You can taste it, you can sense it. That physical block of ice is actually condensed water, right? Now that is the jivatma occupying a physical form. Let's take
The
as the
solid
solid
form.
block of ice, the solid block of ice, because it's water which is condensed and it's more physical. So let's say that is the jivatma which is occupying the physical form. When you heat this water, so this block of ice, it will become liquid,
Yes.
right? That is more fluidic
Yeah.
than the solid block of ice. The state has changed, it has transformed.
Yes.
If you further heat
Which becomes a higher soul?
yeah, it is like the example of being more fluidic, right? Having a greater expansion of consciousness, if you like, right? Easily achieving or feeling oneness because it can flow, really. So that is the state of the expanded consciousness, let's say, of the higher soul. If you further heat the water, then you will further realize a further expanded state of consciousness, which is vaporized,
Yes.
which is not even visible.
Okay.
That is what you call, let's say, the state of the Paramatma.
Right.
It is not really visible. This is just to give an example of the state of expansion of consciousness from a more restricted physical level to an invisible level. And then you realize that this vapor is all pervasive, or this steam or this state is all pervasive. There is literally just no restriction. So when the individualized soul, which is in the solid block of ice, realizes that kind of expanded awareness or consciousness, then it experiences oneness with everything that is around it.
Which is like the fourth level of consciousness, we call it.
Yes. So, and then from there, you can also sense or realize that when this vapor is further condensed, it will become liquid. And when it is further condensed, it will become a solid block of ice. So that is the process of what you call reincarnation.
Reincarnation.
So
yes.
it is a change of state, but it is always there. At some points in time, it appears as a solid block of ice, which means you can see it in a shape and form. But the rest of the times, it is formless.
कुछ प्रेयर्स में ऐसे कहते हैं ना कि आई एम नॉट माई बॉडी, आई एम नॉट माई माइंड, आई एम दैट आई एम. सोहम वाला कॉन्सेप्ट. तो आई एम दैट आई एम, तो मैं एग्जैक्टली कौन हूँ? मतलब ये मुझे कनेक्शन समझ में आया हायर सोल और परमात्मा का, पर उसके बाद क्या, मुझे क्या करना चाहिए?
So when we live life, many times we get entangled with situations. We get entangled with senses. Let's say you've had a bad day and someone has been really abusive, or you've had a fight with someone. Then it's very difficult for you to extricate yourself outside of the whole thing. You realize that it may take you hours or days, and in many cases, years as well. And you will experience the same kind of restlessness. So what has happened in this situation is you have identified yourself with that anger or that abuse or that malice. And you're not really able to extricate yourself from that situation, which is why you are in the state of pain. When you say, I am not the body, I am not the emotion, which means I am not the anger or the violence, what it allows you to do is it allows you to disentangle yourself from the situation. Einstein said no problem can be solved from the level or the state of consciousness from where it has been created. So the problem happened because you were entangled, which is you means the I am or the Jivatma was entangled with the situation. That is why you can feel the pain, you can feel the anger. The moment you say, I am not the body, I am not the emotion or the anger, it allows you the ability to free yourself from the situation and take an independent and objective view. When you're able to disentangle yourself, then you see the situation differently, not from the same perspective.
Yeah.
And then it allows you to release yourself. It becomes much easier for you to be able to let go.
Yeah.
So the mantra or the affirmation which says, I am not the body, I am not the emotions, I'm not the thoughts, allows you to experience an expanded state of awareness or consciousness independent of the body itself. Because that is really what is true. Let's take the example of a car and a driver. You look at the car is a very beautiful, sophisticated vehicle. But without the driver, the car cannot really move. It is really the driver who is driving, directing the car. The driver who's sitting inside the car is the I am. The car itself is the body. Now, sometimes you get identified with the vehicle.
So you get identified
Yeah, you
with
get
the body.
identified
how we
with
do
the
that, yeah.
with the body, which means you get identified with the pain, you get identified with the discomfort that it is going through. And as a result, the I am experiences suffering. But the moment you say you're not the body, or you're not the emotion, or you're not the thought, it allows the I am a certain degree of independence in existence from the body itself, because that is what is true. Then it is able to release itself from that pain, that suffering, and that entanglement. So when you're doing an affirmation about the I am, which is equivalent to the Hindu mantra Soham, that is what you're trying to do. You're trying to seek help, you're trying to seek guidance from the Atma or the higher soul, which is a higher version of yourself.
Yeah. कभी कभी मतलब क्योंकि ये कॉन्सेप्ट हमें पता है, सो आई डू दिस, आई लुक एट माई सेल्फ, ओके दिस इज माई बॉडी, बट आई एम नॉट दिस, आई एम थिंकिंग दिस, बट आई एम नॉट दिस. सो यहाँ तक समझ में आता है. और जब आपने गाड़ी का एग्जाम्पल बोला, वो क्लियरली बैठ रहा है कि आई एम नॉट द गाड़ी, आई एम द ड्राइवर. तो ये कॉन्सेप्ट दिख रहा है, मुझे समझ में आ रहा है. बट आई एम नॉट द बॉडी, आई एम नॉट द माइंड. लेकिन फिर मैं क्या हूँ ना एग्जैक्टली, उससे वो अलग आके सोचना, तो मैं सोच क्या रही हूँ, तो मैं कर क्या रही हूँ, तो वो वाला कॉन्सेप्ट अभी भी क्लियर नहीं है. जो नहीं है वो समझ में आया, तो क्या है वो समझ में नहीं
So the nature of the soul, for example, if that question is about, okay, you're not the body, you're not the emotion, it's quite clear, समझ में आया, तो अभी वास्तविक में मैं क्या हूँ? So the simple answer to that is, we all come from God, we all belong to God. So then let's explore the nature of God. Let's try and understand, what that is. One of the ways to understand or at least speculate about God is think of, let's say, a wireless signal. A wireless signal. So, these days telecom and networks are quite pervasive. So imagine a telecom tower, right? It has a signal that is all pervasive. Imagine a signal that is quite pervasive and that pervades throughout the entire universe. So anywhere you are within the universe, you will be connected to the network. As long as you have the chip, as long as you have the chip or the SIM, you will be connected to that network. So that is what you mean by God is everywhere. Because God is not really something physical. It is it's like energy with consciousness, which is all pervasive.
सो गॉड इज एनर्जी, इसलिए हर रिलीजन में अपने अपने गॉड है. सो गॉड इज एनर्जी.
Yes.
कोई उन्हें आइडल फॉर्म में वर्शिप करता है, कोई किसी और फॉर्म में वर्शिप
Yeah, so
करता है.
that again comes back to the concept of the block of ice and vapor. So you realize that there is vapor or steam which is invisible. That is an invisible version of God. That is the formless aspect of God. Now, the formless aspect of God is true, exists, and it's all pervasive, and it's quite powerful. Subtle divine energy with consciousness. But for people to comprehend that God is difficult. That's why you need God in a physical form, in a idealized form. And that is the solid block of ice. When you condense a part of that vapor, it becomes liquid and then it solidifies. So that means you see that God is formless, but at the same time, it has form also. Because
बट
in
व्हेन वी
the
कंडेंस तो मुझे ऐसी फीलिंग आ रही है कि कंडेंस करके तो उनका छोटा फॉर्म बना लेते ना
that
हम.
is right. So
हाँ.
that is the physical idols that we worship. So God with form in many cultures and traditions is depicted as a trinity. So that is why you have God Shiva, God Vishnu, and God Brahma, which are the form aspects of God. Because
Right.
God itself is energy, and the three primary energies are will, love, and intelligence. These energies are depicted in form as Shiva, Vishnu, and Brahma.
Brahma, right.
Now, when you depict them in form and you weave stories around it, then it becomes much easier for you and me to relate to it compared to relating with a completely
A
invisible
formless,
aspect of God.
yes, got
So,
it.
whether you like it or not, it's like the physical form is like a link to a website. Now, if I have a link to the website, when I click on the link, I get led to the website. So that means when you have a physical aspect of God, by connecting to it in the right way, you will still achieve a taste of the invisible aspect of God. Of course, there are people who don't really need the form aspect to worship, and they can directly connect with the invisible level. Either ways, it is good. For most of us, we need God with form, and hence, in all cultures and traditions, you have symbols, you have idols of deities that you worship in order to get to the invisible aspect.
The link to the website.
Yes.
So, when does the soul enter the body and how does it enter?
I mean, based on scriptures, and again, this here I have to specifically mention Achieving Oneness of the Higher Soul by Grandmaster Chua Kuksui. It's a wonderful book and treatise on the soul itself. And many of the Hindu scriptures, if you read them, it says that the Jivatma, which is the aspect of the soul that occupies the body, it makes its presence felt, or it enters or occupies the body literally around the 7th month of pregnancy. That is why in many cultures and traditions, the 7th month of pregnancy is considered quite holy or sacred or auspicious. Baby showers happen around that time, and God Bharai also happens around that time. So there is a certain credence based on what we
तब
see
तक वो सिर्फ
physically.
बॉडी होता है
Yeah.
womb में.
So
हाँ.
I mean, not exactly the to put it that way. So think of it as you're buying a house.
हाँ.
You think of it, you're the owner, you want to buy a house, but the house is not yet ready. So what will happen is that you will still have to put some capital in. I mean, nobody's just going to say, okay, the house is ready, now you can come and purchase it. So that means there has to be a certain seed capital that has to be given. So what it tells you is that there is a certain engagement of soul energy in the initial stages also. So when the body is in a state of formation, right, when the sperm fertilizes the egg in the womb of the mother, the body is in a state of formation. But since it's not really ready, a lot of soul energy cannot really make its presence felt because the body cannot really handle or sustain it. So some part of the energy of the soul makes its presence felt. But a large part of the soul energy anchors itself during the seventh month of pregnancy. Think of it as if, your house is more or less complete.
Yeah.
And then you can go and you can do your puja and all of that. And then, the rest of the furnishing, etc. is done. And then later you occupy. So that is how the soul also
enters the body. And how
body.
does it enter? It's very fascinating. Matlab, it's an energy, right? So the energy enters in a physical form.
Yeah. So because remember, the even the parents are souls. Even the parents are
Huh,
souls,
huh,
right? The baby is also a soul. So when the sperm fertilizes the egg, right, we
huh,
just think of it as a physical sperm and an egg,
huh.
but no, it has that creative energy. So
Hmm.
when the sperm fertilizes the egg, at that point in time, if you can imagine or speculate that there is a certain energy that descends through the sperm and into the egg. So
Ah,
that energy, that is the quality, that is an aspect of the soul that descends
right.
through the union, the physical union of the parents. And
Yeah.
then slowly there is more and more energy
Energy from
that
got it, got it.
descends.
How and why a soul chooses a specific set of parents and a specific place? कैसे वो सोल चूज करता है कि मुझे इधर जाना है?
So, one of the understandings about that aspect is, uh, we start from the reason why the soul chooses to incarnate. So, let's take the example of the tree again. So, you have a tree which is matured, which is flowering and bearing fruits. And then from the fruits come the seed itself. So, that seed which comes from that tree is what you call, let's say, the individual soul. The tree itself is God, the seed is the individual soul. When you look at the seed, it is quite obvious that the seed can become the tree itself. You will have no doubt about it. So let's say you have a apple tree. From the apple tree comes the
See,
apple seed, the
hmm.
fruit and the seed. When you see an apple seed, you have no doubt that it will become a apple tree. But then you also realize that this seed is raw
Hmm.
or immature as compared to
To
the
the
tree
tree.
itself.
Hmm.
That is our relation in respect to God. We are seeds from the tree,
Hmm.
but we are not yet the tree itself.
Hmm.
You cannot go to an apple seed and ask for an apple fruit. You cannot say, "Give me an apple fruit." It can't because it cannot produce the fruit. But if you go to the tree can give
Can
you
give,
an
yeah,
apple
yeah,
fruit. So you realize that while we have the potential within us to become the tree, in reality, we are not yet the tree.
yeah. Hmm.
So that means there is a need for growth and evolution.
Huh.
There is a need for growth and evolution.
Huh.
So, one of the primary reasons for life or incarnation is to be able to accelerate this growth or evolution.
अच्छा.
Right now, let's take the example of a car.
Hmm.
If you are, let's say, certain part of Bombay, let's say Dadar,
Hmm.
and you have to travel, let's say 80 kilometers, right? You have the choice of walking, but it is going to take a long time. So what do you do in order to cut short the journey? You would drive
Hmm.
or you would hail a cab and you will
Hmm.
get there. What is the purpose of hailing a cab or driving? You enter into a vehicle, the purpose is to accelerate the journey,
Hmm.
right? So that's how the jivatma occupies the body. The body is a vehicle or a car. The
Huh.
jivatma has a spiritual destination to achieve,
Huh.
but without the body, that's going to take a long, long, long time.
Yes.
That's why it occupies the body as a vehicle in order to accelerate its spiritual journey.
Hmm.
So, in other words, the purpose of occupying a body or a vehicle is to accelerate, to evolve, which means it translates into learning.
Hmm.
When you're evolving, what are
Hmm.
you doing? You're gathering skills.
Hmm.
There are challenges that you will need to encounter, either physically or emotionally or mentally, various kinds, varieties of challenges. By overcoming those challenges, you will learn, and certain aspects of your consciousness or your awareness will really grow and expand.
Hmm.
That means there are lessons to learn. So the question is, who is going to give you those lessons to learn? Who will be the medium for you, the soul, to learn?
The
So
body.
that, yeah, the
Huh.
body. But where does the body really come from?
Huh.
Who is giving you the body? So those are the set of parents that will give you the body. Because
Ah.
if there is a certain question or a syllabus to learn, let's say if you have to learn history,
Hmm.
then you have to enroll into a college that gives you that lesson. If your
Ah.
lesson is about economics, then you cannot go into a history school. You'll have to enroll into an economics school.
So in my previous birth, suppose the basic concept, that I had learned from your sessions is एक soul का पर्पस है इवॉल्व होना, ठीक है, उसको आगे पढ़ाई करते, जैसे हम स्कूल में सेकंड स्टैंडर्ड, फोर्थ स्टैंडर्ड, 10th स्टैंडर्ड, पोस्ट ग्रेजुएशन करते हैं. सो एक बार अगर एक सोल ने एक लाइफ टाइम खत्म किया एंड सपोज उसने 10th स्टैंडर्ड तक पास किया, तो अगले जन्म में क्या वो वहां पे बर्थ लेगा जहाँ पे वो 11th 12th और हायर एजुकेशन कर सके?
Yeah, so good question. So, like we have the gradation in school. Let's say if you have cleared fourth grade, then the next grade opens up for you, which is the fifth grade. But if you have done the fourth grade, you will not find yourself back in the fourth grade or in the third grade, which means
Right.
when there is a certain level of skill or quality or development of the soul that is achieved, uh, you will not really retrogress. You will
Right.
only progress. You will only progress
Progress.
from there on, or you will stay there if the lesson has not really been learned.
Yeah.
So there is no escape in life.
अगर मैं फेल हो गई तो मुझे वापस
Yeah,
से करना
if you have
पड़ेगा.
failed, तो आप वहीं रहेंगे.
हाँ, तो इसका मतलब पिछले जन्म में मैंने कुछ लेसन सीखे होंगे, इस जन्म में मेरा सोल और इवॉल्व हो रहा है और नेक्स्ट जन्म में और ज्यादा होगा. वापस ये चीज या इससे पहले वाली चीज नहीं करूंगी मैं.
हाँ, अगर आपने लाइफ जिया नहीं, अगर आपने वो जो चैलेंजेस हैं उनके बारे में कुछ नहीं किया, if you are trying to escape challenges, then there is no growth for the soul, right? Because you're not doing anything about it. Let's say if there is a certain fear that you have, let's say fear of losing or fear of doing something or fear of committing yourself to a certain kind of work. Nature gives you the opportunities to be able to do that. But अगर आप वो चीज़ नहीं लेते, अगर आप वो कमिटमेंट नहीं करते, तो आपने तो सीखा ही नहीं, right? So that means there is no progress on that quality as far as this particular life is concerned. The person may think, the soul may think कि अच्छा नहीं किया तो escape हो गया, but without realizing that the same lesson is going to come back in another shape and form, much tougher than what you had to face this lifetime. Because remember, if there is a debt that you have to neutralize and you don't pay the debt on time, it is going to be loaded with interest and penalties.
So basically वो soul वैसे set of parents ढूंढता है?
Yeah, so now the interesting concept is this. If you look at the human population, which is about 7 or 8 billion people in the world, you will realize that every soul is unique, right?
Yeah.
Because individually our DNAs are unique, and our retina, our fingerprints, everything is unique. Now that is a statistical improbability. Because you see, how does the incoming soul, a new soul, a fresh soul coming into this world, know that there are so many people and that database existing?
Yes.
Why will it not really replicate itself? So that means it makes us aware or realize that there is a central repository or database to whom all of these individual
तो मतलब वो सोल को बताया जाता है you are supposed to go
So
here.
that
यहाँ
means-
पे आपका
that means
reporting होने
that
वाला.
central repository is what you call God, and we are all connected to it. Now, each one of us has individual lessons to learn, to overcome. So these individual lessons we will encounter in life. In order for that, vehicles have to be suitable for that purpose. So let's say if somebody is born in the East, then devotion of faith or certain cultural inclination towards God, or maybe yoga, that come quite naturally. Right? Likewise, in the West, there are certain other positives,
Yes.
right? Which is, you are sophisticated, the development of the mind is far more, you tend to be very objective, and so on and so on. So there are pluses and pros and cons of both. But depending on the type of lesson that the soul needs to learn, the soul will choose a particular set of parents and a location for the soul to really build and acquire those skills or qualities. And in this, in this relation, one of the laws to consider is the law of attraction, which means love binds and hatred also binds. So the set of family or parents that a soul chooses could be based on the laws of attraction, which means these are souls who in the past you may have had a very good relationship with. They may not necessarily have been your parents, but they have been with you for a while, and they have been supportive, and you have also been supportive of them.
अच्छा, तो
There is a
इसलिए
bond of
हमारे
love.
हाँ, इसलिए हमारे कल्चर में नहीं कहते कभी कोई सीनियर या बुजुर्ग गुजर गए हों और उसी फैमिली में एक बर्थ होता है, तो कभी लोगों को लगता है कि उन्हीं का रीबर्थ हुआ है, ये
It's
उसी
I
वजह
mean
से.
that is just how we relate to that concept.
Yes.
Right, so in other words, the set of parents that we may have in this lifetime, if we enjoy a really good relationship with them, it is quite likely that they have been in the sphere of love of the soul, and we have been in their spheres of love for a long time. Likewise, you also encounter people in this life who for some reason you cannot really have a good relationship with. It just seems that there is a, 36 ka ankada
Yes.
or something like
Yeah.
that. It is quite likely that you have been, or they have been, carrying forward this kind of animosity, not just in this lifetime, but from previous lifetimes as well. That's why that's a difficult lesson to surmount. But nevertheless, you still learn. Whether you learn the easy way or the hard way, it is immaterial. At the end of the day, you still learn.
और हर सोल का एवोल्यूशन जो गोल होता है वो अलग अलग होता होगा ना. जैसे somebody wants to be a lawyer, somebody wants to be an engineer, somebody wants to be a doctor, तो वो एक इंसान हर चीज़ तो नहीं कर सकता है. सो तो वो अपने जो रास्ता होता है वो सोल का एवोल्यूशन में, तो वो उसी रास्ते पे चलता है क्या, कि वो सर्वगुण संपन्न वो सोल का अल्टीमेट गोल है कि मुझे हर चीज़ में चैंपियन बनना है.
So that for us, I mean, in the initial stages, let's say if you're in the 4th or the 5th grade, the lessons that you can handle are the lessons of a 4th and a 5th grade. If somebody gives you a PhD level question to solve, you are not going to be able to solve it. So, in other words, God is kind and all compassionate. Depending on the degree of evolution of the soul, the kind of tests are given. Now, those tests, if they come your way, at least you know that you are capable of handling them. God is compassionate enough to give you those tests that will not break your back. But as you grow, as you mature and get, let's say, closer to 10th or the university level or PhD level, you realize that the questions that you're going to handle are completely different. Why? Because the soul has a certain degree of maturity and it has grown through multitudes of life experience. So now it will not be given smaller weights to handle. It will be given weights to handle that are equivalent to its degree of development. So that's why when you look at some people like spiritual teachers or saints, the kind of problems that they encounter or they surmount are, you cannot really even fathom. Let's take the example of Lord Jesus and the crucifixion or the bearing of the cross. I mean, if you look at that, ordinarily it is not really possible. But, while it may be a symbolic story, it tells you the degree of evolution of the soul and the kind of challenges that it can really handle. In our case, in many cases, we are just dealing with our own small petty lives and issues or problems. But yet, when we do that, there is a certain degree of evolution that happens slowly but surely. And then that takes you to another level, till eventually we get to the level where we will also be able to handle and surmount those kind of issues or problems.
हरी, सो हमारा सोल मल्टीपल जन्म लेता रहता है और इवॉल्व होता रहता है हर जन्म में. सो व्हाट इज द अल्टीमेट गोल ऑफ द सोल?
Okay, let's think of it this way. जब हम जन्म लेते हैं, we occupy the body. The Jivatma occupies the body. Then we realize that, the physical body presents what you call a limitation or a handicap. Very simply, the senses are driven by external stimuli. It could be money, it could be food, it could be sex, it could be laziness, many, many things. And in one lifetime, we are not really able to overcome all of these things, right? It is one thing to have a certain degree of control over the physical body. It is another thing to be completely driven by the needs of the physical body. So that takes a number of lifetimes for the soul to really overcome,
अच्छा.
to get to a level of comfort and a degree of mastery over the physical body. So that means, you're like a jockey who's riding a horse, but you have no control over the horse itself.
So that's what happens
yeah,
at times.
So think of life as a series of what you call
Births.
challenges and experiences, where, and this may happen over many, many lifetimes, where the soul is learning to gain mastery over the physical form itself.
So जो बहुत इवॉल्व सोल है वो कैसे उसका यूजुअल बिहेवियर क्या होता है
हाँ,
मतलब
so-
इज दैट पर्सन नॉट टू मच इनटू सर्टेन थिंग्स बिकॉज ही इज इवॉल्व्ड
No, so let's come there. So this is just the physical handicap. The second is the emotional handicap. You may have control over the physical body, but you don't really have control over your emotions. You're a slave to your emotions, and that we already know when we live our life, right? Whether it is anger, whether it is jealousy, whether it is lust, or any other kind of thing. So, in other words, we lack control. So that means even though you may have a certain degree of control or mastery over your physical body, it will take the soul several lifetimes before it is able to achieve a certain degree of control over the emotional body. So think of the emotional body also as a horse, and the soul being the rider of that horse, and unfortunately not having control, and hence emotionally gets deviated or misdirected from where it's supposed to go.
डू यू थिंक emotional control is little more difficult than the physical control?
Yeah, emotional control is much more difficult because it's like you always say bhavnaon ka samandar.
shikar ya whatever, हाँ.
So it becomes difficult. Now then add to it another layer of difficulty, which is at the mental level. Because mentally, if you think about it, we are not really able to use our mind. We are not even able to focus on something. The human attention span is what, about 2 or 3 minutes. That means it is very difficult for us to keep our mind focused. It gets easily distracted by the senses. It gets easily distracted by what's happening outside. So then a series of lifetimes is spent on trying to control and regulate the mind. So these are all the horses that you have. You, the soul, are the rider of these vehicles, but unfortunately the vehicles are driving you insane instead of you being able to control or regulate the vehicles. Through a series of lifetimes and lifetimes and lifetimes, the soul is able to purify the vehicles, purify the senses, and has some degree of control over the senses. Then, once you have a certain degree of control over the senses, what do you do with it? Instead of the senses going outward, the senses are drawn inwards. And then the soul begins to focus the mind and the senses within to realize who it actually is. And that is when the process of soul searching happens. If you see the lives of many people around us, there are people who are not even bothered about who they are or what their nature is or the I am. They just want to live life, they just want to enjoy it, and for them life is okay. But then you will also come across a set of souls who constantly keep asking themselves, why is this happening to me? What is really the purpose of life? What am I here to do? Because I'm getting bored with doing all of these things. So why do you find that there are a set of souls that are asking these soul searching questions, whereas the rest of them are not really bothered about it? That means that soul which is asking that question has reached a certain stage of development or control, and now the next set of challenges have to be addressed in terms of figuring out who you really are and what your connection to the divine really is. But for the rest of the souls, it is not yet time. So the chick never hatches before time. It is only when the egg shell is kind of ready, the hen sits on it. That the hen warms the egg. That hen is the spiritual teacher. Only when the soul within is knocking on the door and asking those questions, then the presence of the spiritual teacher is felt.
पूछोगे नहीं तो आएगा नहीं.
Yes, ask and you shall receive.
Yeah.
So when the soul is really seeking, then God presents itself in the form of a spiritual teacher suitable for the soul. And then the spiritual teacher kind of takes charge, which means the spiritual teacher will guide the soul. Eventually, it is really the chick that has to hatch the egg and come out. But when you realize this, you see what we call this life and what we really enjoy about it, it's a prison cell.
It's a
prison.
It's a prison.
Because
so
if you
actually,
look-
the soul is in the prison.
yeah,
if it's in the
because
body.
the chick is inside the egg. Imagine when the baby is inside the womb of the mother, isn't it a dark cave?
Yeah.
Would you like to go back into the dark cave?
No.
Now that you have seen the light, would you like to go back in? If you ask the chick that hatched the egg, would you like to go back inside the egg? The chick will say, hell no, this life is so much better. That means what we are right now enjoying, the so-called life, is a life of imprisonment. We are within the confines of the body, and that to us seems enjoyable. Imagine what would happen when you experience the freedom and overcome the limitations of the body. Then you would not really want to go back in.
I want to know how does it feel to be there?
Yes. So that means right now we are enjoying the dark. We are waiting for the light. So these series of lifetimes that we are actually going through using several bodies is to be able to gain control or mastery over the bodies, so you have the facility to leave them just like a chick hatches out of the egg, and then experience the freedom or liberation of light.
So I got to know the second layer, which is controlling your emotions. The third layer, which is about focus. The first layer, उसमें क्या क्या चीजें आती है?
So even for example, if you're sitting for meditation, how long can you sit still? Does your body fidget when you're sitting for your meditation? Okay, let's talk about food and control over food. Are you able to regulate your appetite?
Right.
Eat in a disciplined manner, eat slowly, chewing the food. Are you able to sleep in a regulated manner? Right? So there are many things that come. So the attribute of physical control encompasses many of those things. Then the regulation of your breath. Okay. Because many of us, for example, when you're breathing, you're not really even aware of your breath. The breath is more or less shallow. It's quite hurried. But a state of yoga means that the breath is free-flowing, it's smooth, and it actually energizes. And more than that, it results in experiencing the soul. So to take an example, you see when your body is sleeping at night, right? Your breath is still happening. But you know that your mind is also sleeping. Because you have no sense of identity. Your conscious mind is not really functioning. So the question then is, who is facilitating this breathing? Who? That's the soul. That's the
soul
I am.
Never sleeps?
The soul never sleeps.
My God.
The soul never sleeps.
It's not sleeping even outside the body. It's
yeah,
not
it is.
sleeping
The soul
inside
is,
the body.
Yeah, that is why in one of the scriptures, when somebody asked Adi Shankaracharya, who are you? The answer or the response was, I am awake. Because the soul is in a state of what you call awareness. The soul, unfortunately, that part of the soul which is inside the body is not really awakened. And that is what we are trying to gain or get into. But you realize that even for a baby, the baby when it is born, it doesn't really understand chemistry. It doesn't really understand physics. It has no concept of biology. The brain is not so developed. The mind is not developed. The question then is, how come the baby survives? Who is doing the respiration for the baby? How does the heart really beat? What is the intelligence when the mind or the brain is not really functioning that is still functioning for the baby? That program, that intelligence is what you call the soul. So all we realize is that this chemistry is already happening in the body, but we are not consciously aware of it. Soul realization is about consciously tuning into this and becoming aware of it. Right now, it's happening to us at an unconscious level.
So the most evolved state of the soul would be जो बैठते हैं ना इवॉल्व लोग मेडिटेशन पे, जो बहुत घंटे दिनों तक बैठ सकते हैं, कैन वी से दैट दीज आर द मोस्ट इवॉल्व सोल? बिकॉज देन उनको ना फिजिकल नीड्स होती हैं ज़्यादा, ना इमोशंस उन पे हावी होते हैं, फोकस कर पाते हैं. कैन वी से
No,
दैट?
I mean, it really depends on the purpose of the soul. When you look at them, what you're seeing is just this lifetime. But there have been lifetimes of the soul in the past. So, this lifetime, you see the soul as a saint. But in the previous lifetimes, the soul may have been a politician, may have been a scientist, may have been a business leader, or whatever else. This lifetime, the purpose is the soul is a saint. So you see the soul meditating. Now, one of the things, maybe the purpose of the soul is to generate what you call ideas or creative instincts, to inspire people to work. And that is what it is doing. It is actually channeling certain kinds of energies, right? But generally, the purpose of evolution or soul realization is not just to be a monk,
हाँ.
but it is to be a part of the regular day to day life, to be able to implement
The
the
learnings.
qualities and the learnings of the soul, which you have in theory, into
Yeah.
actual
Can I
day
say
to day
that
life.
suppose for this lifetime, if I have become a soul and I've learned those lessons, if I've evolved, so in my next birth, I can be a businessman and create a business that's needed for the world.
Yeah, it is true. So whatever the learnings are, whether you read the Bhagavad Gita, whether you read the Bible, whether you read the Quran, whether you read the Vedas or the Upanishads or the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, these are all treatises on yoga and how you have to live your life. This is just like buying a ticket. It gives you a ticket, but what do you do with the ticket? You have to really get into the train and ride it. That's the application of those teachings. Just by having a ticket doesn't entitle you to anything. That is just satisfying your mind with some kind of information or knowledge. Unless the knowledge is really implemented,
practice.
put into practice, then when you realize there is wisdom gained. Because in applying the knowledge to your life, there will be mistakes. And by making mistakes, you become wise because you know those mistakes should not be happening or committed again. Then you become a wise man when you have done this over and over again. The great spiritual teachers not only hold the key, which is the train ticket, but they have actually traveled and applied it in their lives, and they have synthesized the wisdom. So now when they teach, it's not just a plain teaching or knowledge sharing, but it is also sharing of experiences or what you call wisdom.
Right.
That makes the learning much more easier. Yet when you learn, eventually you have to apply it. So the purpose of evolution or soul realization is not just to keep this for yourself, but to be able to implement this in your life, whereby other souls can also benefit from it.
Right.
The reason why the sun is able to shine is because it radiates light, it shares light. The reason why it can receive more is because it gives.
Gives more.
So that is the law. So when you exhale, you're able to inhale even more.
Right. Hari, now I want to talk about a topic which can be a little uncomfortable and used to be scary for me even to think about it or talk about it. But now I've taken, that's the ultimate reality, which is death. And I want to know, how does one feel at the time of death? What exactly happens? How does the soul leave the body? When does it leave the body?
So death is it's a speculative topic.
Okay.
Because unless you have a near-death experience
Yes.
or you have recollection of this, it's going to be speculative. So anyways, let's speculate on it. Based on readings and scriptures, what it says is that the physical pain associated with death is hardly anything. It's like a mosquito bite or maybe
Ooh.
an injection. So hardly anything. Unfortunately, we have the nature of the mind, the human mind, is that it fears uncertainty. You know that death is certain, but the time and the mode of death is uncertain. So that makes it more fearful, especially for the human mind. Now, think of it this way, that the nature has the law of alternation, which you're aware of. You have the day, and then you have the night, and then you have another day again. You have a breathe in, which is inhalation, and then you have a breathe out, which is exhalation. Without the exhalation, no further inhalation is possible, which means if there is an incarnation, which means you have entered the body, there has to be a checkout. If you're checking into the hotel, there has to be a checkout, right? Now, why is that needed? Why is death needed? Death is actually grace by nature. It is a divine blessing. It is nature's divine blessing. Why is that? You see, you are wearing the body. You're the soul, you're wearing the body. The body is like a garment. Now, if you keep on wearing a garment for 70, 80, 90 years of your life, what do you think happens to the garment?
Yeah.
Especially if you're not really careful about how you use it. Because instead of using the garment or the body, we are abusing it. So in many ways, the garment becomes worn or torn or no longer suitable. Imagine you have a car that you have been driving, and now, it's not suitable anymore. You can't even maintain it. Now, what was the purpose of the car in the first place? Not for itself, not to admire the beauty of it, but it had a certain purpose because it was carrying the soul. Now, if that purpose is defeated, what would you do with it? So then nature says, hey, let's give you another car. Let's give you a better car.
Yeah.
But for that, you'll have to come out.
Yeah.
And this will have to go into recycle mode. So in many ways, this is what really happens. So death is actually a blessing in disguise. Unfortunately, the human mind, because of its nature of anxiety and worry and fear, creates great dark mystery around it. But it is a time or a period of rest for the soul from life before it prepares for the. Think of life as from one point of view, let's say inhalation. You're breathing in a lot of oxygen, but during the process of combustion, what happens? Carbon dioxide is generated. Can you hold the carbon dioxide in your system for a long period of time? No, the body cannot sustain it, so you have to exhale it. So in other words, all the the emotional baggage that you have, all the mental trauma that you have gone through, all of those are still residing within you. You need a break from all of that. So the soul is given a break. And it goes into a period of rest or restitution. And then after a certain period of time, the soul is given, or it presents itself, a new set of vehicles or bodies to wear, and then it comes back again, but of course in a different shape or form.
I'm sure even the soul is attached to the other people and, the physical form and the other people. And does the soul feel bad while leaving the world?
In many cases, if you're talking about natural death, right, the soul is in a state of what you call peace or ecstasy when it is leaving. Because if you have encountered people who are actually suffering in their body, they will also tell you that I pray that
want to go.
I'm being given a relief. If God can be kind and graceful enough to grant me a release. Why? Because being in that body which is suffering, actually conditions or limits the soul. They want a break, they want a release. So that is why death is a natural process which nature has given as a blessing for the soul to be able to, it's like you are living in a prison and somebody gives you a key and
live your life.
Opens the prison door and
Yes.
sets you free. I mean, how liberating can that be?
Yes.
So death is that kind of a liberating process.
When does the soul leave the body? Like somebody is dying, so it's right then, or maybe after a few moments. And is the soul somewhere close by, at home?
The natural process of death actually starts a long way back. You see, how do you know? You see, there are the ages that are formative when your body is really growing. So that means that's a process when the soul is getting more and more involved in the matter or the body itself. But then over a period of time, you realize that your physical growth has matured. And then slowly you also go through a phase where your healing process of the body and the immunity also slows down.
Yes.
If you observe, you will know. If you get hurt when you were young, your body would
Yes.
heal quite faster. And then slowly you realize that the time lapse is much more. As you get even older, the immunity even further becomes weak. So all of these processes, they suggest or they tell you that the soul energy is naturally and slowly in the process of withdrawing itself.
Oh.
So that means what you call death or the process has already started several years back.
Yeah.
Now, what we call death is the final,
Yes.
right? When the soul leaves. Now, when the soul is in the process of leaving, which means naturally, over a period of time, the soul itself wants to isolate. If the soul is sensitive, the soul will not socialize too much. The soul will spend a lot of time introspecting. The soul will spend a lot of time thinking about important events in life and maybe even asking for forgiveness from people that it may have hurt.
Yes.
I have been with people who have been doing this, and it is natural for them. For some of them, they may even want to donate and do a lot of charity because they understand the material value of things and the futility of it when they are very close. So they want to be at peace with themselves when they are in the process of
Process.
leaving.
Right.
So they are, whether they like it or not, they are already preparing for it. Of course, in the case of a violent death or a sudden death,
Yes.
you don't really have that much time.
Yes.
You're not really ready for it. So when the soul leaves, of course, the process still happens that the soul leaves, but it is in a state of shock because of the lack of preparedness of the soul itself.
What can we do in our lives to ensure a calm and peaceful death?
Uh, this question is about preparation for death. So one of the things is consider every day as a mini life, and so one of the practices that is again mentioned or taught in Achieving Oneness with a Higher Soul by Grandmaster Chwakoksui is that there is a period of what you call silent review or introspection of the day itself. And this is done maybe towards the end of the day before you put your body to rest, reflecting on the events that have happened throughout the day and what have your reactions or responses been. Of course, there are things that you would have done quite well, which you can appreciate yourself for the goodness that you have displayed. But there will also be things where there have been failures. So to review them and to find out or figure out the causes as to why they have happened. What are the internal challenges, limitations that I have which caused those failures to happen? And then trying to remedy them, just becoming more aware of them and trying to visualize that you are actually behaving in a better manner. Don't dwell on the mistakes a lot because you tend to commit them over and over again, but rather dwell on why it happened and how you can internally change that to make it a strength rather than a weakness. So you visualize and then you review your day entirely for about 5 to 10 minutes and then be ready for the next day. So every day becomes like a mini life where you're continuously trying to improve and build upon yourself. When you're doing this, by the end of life, because you know yourself well and you have been working upon yourself, and generally when you live a good life, a helpful life, a charitable life, right, then eventually you are ready because all throughout life, every day you have been learning to let go. You're learning to let go, right? Because eventually death is a process of really
Letting go.
letting go.
What will happen अगर सभी लोग evolve हो जाएंगे? अगर सभी लोग उस realm में पहुंच जाएंगे तो फिर दुनिया कैसी होगी?
So let's think of the systems, right? We are all on planet Earth, so that's a planet. So that's a planetary system that we have. But you know that this planetary system is not, isolated. It's a part of the solar system. And then we know that there are many suns. So there is what you call a universal system as well. We are all on planet Earth. So imagine that, so you have the planetary consciousness, which you designate as an assistant vice president in a company. You have the solar consciousness that you designate as a vice president of the company, and you have a consciousness beyond that which you designate as a president of the company. So just like every employee, the assistant vice president has an aspiration to become a vice president. And the vice president has an aspiration to become a president. But in order for this to happen, there has to be that maturity. So that means if our planetary consciousness aspires to become the solar consciousness, which it does, then every aspect of it has to mature. Which means all of us are parts of planetary consciousness. So that means when we mature, what will happen to the planetary consciousness? It becomes more mature, it gets elevated or promoted. So then it is now capable of handling a solar system. When it gets capable of handling a solar system, of course, that solar consciousness also gets promoted, and it goes and is able to manage something larger. So this is a never-ending story where there is a conscious process of evolution that is happening. Also, eventually, the individual souls also get promoted, right? Because then they overcome the limitation of their bodies, they achieve liberation, and then they are in charge of, large groups of people or souls. They are entrusted with their charge because now they are capable of really managing themselves, and they're able to be the guides of human race. That's how, whether it is a Lord Jesus, that's how, whether it is a Lord Krishna or a Lord Buddha, they achieved their stature.
Wow. Hari, thank you. Thank you for making these complex subjects and sometimes these uncomfortable subjects, and you made it in a very simplified and in a way fun manner. And thank you for making us understand.
Thank you so much for having me here. I hope this was interesting for you and the viewers.
Absolutely. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
जीवात्मा, आत्मा, परमात्मा, सोल सर्चिंग, ये सारे कॉन्सेप्ट्स हैं ना, मुझे थोड़े कंफ्यूजिंग लगते थे, पर अब समझ में आया है. लाइफ आफ्टर डेथ, इस चीज़ से तो मुझे डर ही लगता था, पर अब थोड़ा सिंपल लग रहा है. इनफैक्ट मेरा मकसद ये पॉडकास्ट करने का यही है कि हम सब धीरे धीरे थोड़े इवॉल्व होते जाए. आई एम ऑन दैट पाथ, और मुझे लगता है कि इस पॉडकास्ट से हम सबको कुछ ना कुछ तो वैल्यू मिला ही होगा. अगर आपको कोई भी सवाल है हरी से, तो प्लीज़ आप उन्हें पूछिए कमेंट सेक्शन में, वो जवाब ज़रूर देंगे. और मेरे लिए है तो प्लीज़ लिखिए कमेंट में. और अगर आपको लगता है कि मुझे एक सर्टन टॉपिक पर पॉडकास्ट करना चाहिए, तो आप प्लीज़ मुझे बताइए, और किसके साथ करना चाहिए वो भी बताइए. एंड ऑल्सो प्लीज़ लाइक एंड सब्सक्राइब दिस चैनल फॉर प्रमोटिंग अस. थैंक यू. सी यू सून अगेन.